Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this Blitz chess postmortem of my Blitz game number 340. I was black here and my opponent played e4 and we got into a Sicilian. I chose to play the dragon variation, and so these are the main moves. The exchange of the pawns in the center, and then knight f6 attacking the e-pawn, knight c3 defending, and also blocking the c-pawn, and now g6. Characteristic move of the dragon variation. So we're in the dragon here. If I put on the opening book, you'll see that bishop c4 here is the fourth choice. The most popular move is bishop to e3, setting up the Yugoslav attack with pawn to f3, queen to d2, and later the bishop comes to c4 and castling queenside. Or the bishop stays back and castling queenside. Both lines are played. So an early bishop to c4, but not a bad move. You see this keeps an advantage for white. Just gets us into a less explored opening. And castling and knight c6 are moves that can usually be played in either order. Yeah, looks like either one could be played here. So there's no particular significance to that. Now if he played f3 and I played knight c6, would be transposed back into a pretty standard position. But he played h3. It's another way of keeping my knight out of this square, and preserves the move of playing, the idea of playing f4 later. Although it doesn't really save a tempo because you've played h3 instead of f3, but it permanently controls this square if the pawn stays on h3. So I go knight c6, and he castles. And now I play the rare move e5 here. It looks like I'm missing a trick here. Yeah, so castling maybe was a bit of a mistake. I could just take the pawn after he castles. So what's the... it is a move. Bishop b3 is the main move here, getting the bishop away from this tactic. Okay, so the tactic is... let's just go back to the notation tab since we're out of the book. The tactic is I could just take this pawn here, the famous center fork tactic. And in this case, it's kind of equalizing for black. It's often good for black to play this kind of tactic, just to get rid of some pieces and put a dent in white's advantage in development and space. So what, knight takes c6 is the most accurate way to play it. B takes, and then he's retreating his bishop to d3. And I take this, take c4. So we get a situation where all the knights have been cleared off. Both sides have the bishop pair. It appears that I have a weak pawn here on c6. But I guess I have adequate resources to defend it, and the position overall is about equal. And I have ideas of coming out and attacking his pawns too. So it's not a one-way street at all. It's pretty even position. So anyway, instead of that, I played e5, kicking the knight, and the knight dropped back to f3. So now white has a typical kind of edge you see in the many Sicilians. I want to contest the control of this diagonal. That was my idea of playing e5, was to create a space for my bishop to get it out there. So my opponent plays knight d5, and that's just a blunder because he left his e-pawn undefended. So you can tell that I'm a little bit rusty in playing this game. I've been away from my computer for almost 2 weeks, I guess, and and I hadn't played much Blitz in that time. So yeah, I'm missing some obvious stuff here. I can just grab that pawn. It's not protected. I played rook c8. He exchanged out, and we're back to that situation where white has this slight, typical opening edge, I guess. Bishop takes, pawn takes. I wasn't afraid of this transformation. This may look a bit funny with the pawns clogged up here, but it gives me an open file, and it gives me a little more influence in the center. It makes it easier for me to play the move d5. Of course, these are weaknesses, too, that can be attacked. In particular, we unhighlight those guys. This guy here on e6 is not supported by any pawns, and it can be weak. Okay, my opponent plays queen d2, setting up typical kind of bishop moves along this diagonal. I go on with d5, trying to increase my center influence. Bishop h6. You see, I'm doing fine all along here. So I've gotten somehow when he allowed me to get in this d5 move, it's pretty much equal. And it stays this way. I could have played rook e8 there as well as rook f7, because knight g5 is a bit annoying. I have to move the rook again. but I just go rook e7. And the engine says I could have just taken. He plays c3 to slow down my pawns in the center, I guess. And I went bishop to g7. I could have played d4 immediately, it looks like, but I went bishop here first. He exchanged. And went queen e3. And now I had the idea, oh, okay, I kicked his knight first, h6. Knight drops back to f3, cancel that. And then finally, I knew I played d4 at some point, because I can get a good situation here with these pawns. Now, it turns out the engine thinks he should just drop the queen back to e2 and leave the pawns, leave the tension in the center, maybe bring some rooks over to contest it a little bit. Instead, he just traded, and this kind of helps me out. It undoubles my pawns, and now his queen really has to move. And that gives me a tempo to play the move e5, and now I've got a solid center and a protected passed pawn on d4. So I have a slight edge, and if we can trade everything off, we'll get into an endgame where I'm better. But the game takes a different course. So knight d2, he's regrouping. Maybe he's planning to play f4. I got knight b4 hitting his queen, so interrupting his plans for the moment. But he brings his queen over to an aggressive position opposite my king. I played rook c2, trying to get active. Cancel out rook c2. And keeping my slight advantage, he goes knight f3. And now knight d3 right away is a good move. I eventually find the move knight d3. It's interesting that the knight can go from d3 to f4 and then to e2. I didn't have this whole maneuver in mind even when I eventually played knight d3. When he kicked my knight, I was finally sort of forced to play it. And this maneuver, the knight on this e2 square is really strong, and it appears there's no way for white to really prevent it. So now I have quite a significant edge, but I don't realize it for a while. I play queen d6. I keep a slight edge, but not as big an edge as I could have had. Now he kicks my knight, and now this move is not safe right here because he has knight h4. So I thought there was a discovery on the knight, but I didn't think there was one that was particularly good because knight h4. Hitting the g6 pawn, that's what I thought. It's protected by the queen, so it's not a problem. What I failed to appreciate is there's a second threat with knight h4, which is to come here, and that's a fork. It's a fork of my king and my queen, and the pawn is pinned, so it's taking advantage of how he placed his queen there and delivering and threatening that nasty fork. So this combination of threats gives black an advantage. What it says, I have to play queen a6 to get out of the fork. And also, I need to defend the knight. Yeah, so this is really the only move. And then he can come in here, knight f5 check anyway, and win the rook. Yeah, so all these pieces were lined up in an unfortunate position for that fork. Let's get rid of a few of these arrows. Yeah, see, these guys are all in a circle around the knight fork. So I really was set up here for a problem. So anyway, I played knight d3. He didn't play that. He played b4. And now I have a couple of strong moves. I go knight f4, and I'm threatening knight e2. And now he's the one that has a problem meeting all these knight threats. The engine recommends queen g4 here, getting away from that fork. And then knight e2 anyway. King to h1. h1 or h2 appears to be about equal. And rook to f7. So just piling up on, looks like I'm piling up on the f2 square. Knight e1. Yeah, I'm not sure what the immediate threat is, but definitely my pieces are all active and well placed here. And maybe I can kick his queen around here. Knight e1 and queen takes f4. Knight takes f4. Oh, knight e1. Rook f4 is the threat. Trapping the queen. That's why he's trying to move the knight out of the way. But even that doesn't help, because even with the knight out of the way, the queen still has no moves. So that's why this knight e2 move is so strong. So I'm not sure what he saw. Maybe he didn't notice the fork at all. He just played rook a e1, which kind of defends, but it forces him to give up the exchange. So I play the check, forking king and queen, and win the exchange. And now I have a comfortable lead. I should go on to win the game. But as I said, I was a bit rusty. And he does have knight h4 here still. And I need to respect this threat of the fork, and I need to move my king to h7. It's really the only way to maintain my advantage. And I was still oblivious to that fork. I noticed it after I made this move, which again it sort of defends but not really. So he could deliver the fork right in here. So apparently he didn't see it. He played queen d3 attacking my rook. And now I should just move my rook. I moved it to a2. Okay. So far so good. Queen b3 hitting my rook again. And rook to c2. I was going to try something different this time, so ignore that 0-0. It's just notice the repetition. Queen d3. And now my plan was to defend this way, but this actually is a failed, well, not entirely successful plan, because he can play b4 here, hitting my queen and attacking my rook, which is I was only defending with the queen. So after b4, I have to counterattack his knight, and he takes my rook and I take his knight. And you know, I still have this edge, very slight edge due to this passed pawn here with the endgame. But with these heavy pieces, queen and rook still on the board, white really has excellent drawing chances here. So that this queen to a6 idea was just not a good idea. Anyway, he didn't play b4. He played queen back to g3, continuing to look at my g pawn and threatening knight f4 at an appropriate moment. But he's left a pawn hanging, so I can grab it. I went knight to f3, and now I went queen to f6. So I have really a pretty big advantage here by now, and I really should win this game. But he's still got force on the board. He's got a knight, and that can be a tricky piece. He hits my rook, and he goes knight to c4. Just maneuvering around, poking and prodding. I play e4, start pushing my pawns forward. I think this is a big part of my advantage here. The knight comes into e5. I played rook to... Oh, I played this rook to e7. Yeah, hitting the knight, chasing it away. And I want to get my rooks behind these pawns so I can push them forward more easily. He goes knight g4, hitting my queen. And I went queen to g5. Yeah, queen to g5. This is the losing move here. Well, it gives away a big advantage because of queen d6. Let's check this out. Queen d6. He didn't play this, so I'm keeping my advantage after this. Queen d6, though. He moves his queen with tempo, attacks my rook. And what do I play here? It says rook d2. That's funny. Giving up the rook and going for some perpetual check. Rook d2. What happens if I play rook to f2 here? Rook to f7. He's got queen takes d4 check. King over here to h7. Queen to c4. Aha! Double attacking the rooks. Okay, so the king has to stay in touch with the rook. So king to g8. And still queen to c4 attacking this rook. Rook to d2. And then he can grab another pawn. He can also play f4 here. Interesting. So just that increased activity with this queen is enough to lose the advantage here. So I need to play precisely, even though it seems like from looking at the evaluation it should be an easy win from this point. Requires some correct moves. So queen to e6 or queen to f8. Okay, so queen g5, not good. He played h4, kicking the queen. And now I went queen to d5, getting behind the pawns. He played queen to f4. And now at this point, we're getting to the situation where I was low on time and I was moving quickly. But queen to f4, I should have set off alarms because he's threatening here and he's threatening here, and I need to play something. The engine thinks, yes, queen f5 is the only move to keep the advantage. So just interposing my queen over here and giving up on the h-pawn, but defending with the queen. Instead, I pushed on with my pawns, thinking about my attack, and now he has a win with queen f6 check, which just wins the rook. And then later the game, because my king is still in trouble, he played queen h6 check, which is good enough for a draw with correct play. And Queen h7 check, king f8. I should have gone to f8. I went here, thinking I would escape out this way, not noticing yet another fork. Right here, knight f6 check. And so we finally got, after all those threats of knights forking kings and queens, we finally got one. And there's no defense to this, so I resigned at this point. But anyway, an entertaining game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Leave any comments you have in the section below, and I will see you again soon. Bye.